Again, I'd like to welcome you to the first annual John and Peggy Stewart Family Lecture Series. This annual lecture series will feature, as I indicated, presentations on caregiving issues, and we are fortunate indeed to have a well-known person like Miss Marcel being here to kick off the first ever series presentation. I also have to indicate who our sponsors are for this. They're the ones that make it possible. First, and in no particular order, was the law firm of Delapart and Gilbert, Forest Laboratories, the Johnny B. Bird Senior Alzheimer's Center and Research Institute at USF, and the John and Peggy Stewart family. Now, to the speaker proper. Miss Marcel is the author, publisher, radio host, and national speaker that is intensely aware of caregiving issues, particularly related to dementias and other related disorders. She's dedicated her life to elder care awareness and reform, and I think her book is an excellent step in that direction. She's the devoted daughter of the man, the individual, in the book. And the title of the book is Elder Rage or Take My Father, Please. How to Survive Caring for Aging Parents. Okay? She says that she wrote it so that no one else would ever have to go through what she did. As a former college professor and television executive, she in essence put her career on hold for a period of time. And after fighting through, as she says, fighting through an unsympathetic medical system and enduring her once adoring father's physical and emotional abuse, she decided to do something about it. Her ingenuity and loving persistence turned around a seemingly impossible situation. And so she's been at the front. She knows exactly of what she's speaking. Elder Rage has received more than 50 prestigious endorsements. Miss Marcel has been honored with numerous media awards and in bringing national attention to the value of adult daycare. Also, she received the Advocate of the Year Award from the National Association of Women Business Owners at their Remarkable Women Awards. She's appeared on hundreds of radio and television programs, but it was when she and her book were on the cover page of the AARP Bulletin that things really began to take off. And it's then she knew that she had hit a chord. Also, the number of hits to Amazon.com and the number of positive reviews regarding her book also indicated that she had hit a very, very important chord within a large number of folks within the United States. She's featured in an upcoming documentary about Alzheimer's disease, and she's excited to announce that Elder Rage is being considered for a feature film. Also, she has a radio program, an international radio program via the internet. And if you want to go to wsradio.com, you can see it. And you can see how she approaches caregiver issues with a number of folks. With all of this, we are very pleased to welcome Ms. Jacqueline Marcel.
Thanks. What time do you want me to go till?
Oh, how about 10 up?
10? Only 10 too?
You can go all the way up to the hour.
Okay. Hi. I'm posing for pictures now. How many of you are family caregivers? And how many are professionals? How many are both? Yeah, I've been doing this for about 3 years now, and it's amazing how many. I got this group over here. How many are both now? You know, when I first started doing it, there weren't as many. But I'm here to tell you my story, and I know what you're all thinking. Well, is she a doctor? Is she a nurse? She got any degrees in this? I have a degree in photography and filmmaking. Isn't that pertinent to this? I'll tell you what I do have. I have a DLE. I have a Doctorate of Life Experience. And let me tell you, I really earned it the hard way. I'll tell you my story and what I would do now. You know, hindsight is always 20/20. what I wish I had known and what I wish someone had told me when I was starting out. You know, my dad had always adored me. He was 90% wonderful his whole life, but 10% of a raging temper. So I grew up with this. I was used to him screaming and yelling, not at me. I was the only one. I had the halo. My mom and my brother got it, but it was never at me. And here it is now, it's at me. And I flew from Los Angeles up to San Francisco to try to help them. My mom had needed full-time care after a heart attack, and he had been taking care of her for many years. Refusing all help, but calling me every day, complaining, and and so I had already been through 11 years of flying up there and trying to help. But she almost passed away from his inability to care for her, and I had to step in and, thinking that he would finally relent and let me get some people in there to help. He didn't. And I fought and I fought. It took me a whole year with me begging and pleading, going to doctors, going to professionals, and he'd be so darling in front of those doctors. Have you encountered that, professionals? And the daughter or the son is telling you these incredible stories of what's happening, but you're going, but it seems nice to me. Well, he was socially adjusted. What was happening was he was addicted and trapped in his own bad behavior of a lifetime of screaming and yelling when he got angry. Why I thought that would be different when he got to be 85, I have no idea. But somehow I thought, he'd get older, more mellow. No. And so, the doctor's looking at me like, I'm like, well, you know what I found out much later, what he had told the doctor, oh, my daughter Jacqueline, can't believe anything she says because she just wants my money. I wish he had some I could get. So I just had the most horrible experience. And here I am, fairly highly educated person, very aggressive, very much trying to solve this. And I'm not in some little podunk town. I'm in San Francisco. And I was not directed properly by every doctor, social worker, professional, therapist, all the people that I came in contact with. And once I solved it, I said, I got to write a book. I don't know how to write a book. I read a book. I'll write a book. And I just got to help other people not go through this. And what was really the key was that not one of these professionals mentioned to me, gee, honey, that could be a little dementia starting in your father. Because I just thought this was normal behavior. This is your biggest challenge as professionals, is that the caregiver that comes from another industry, completely other industry, and they're thrown into caregiving for their first time, they have no knowledge. Don't know the difference between Medicare, Medicaid, Medi-Cal. Can't they come up with some different names for these programs? Who knows what they mean when you're not in this industry? And you're just like, it's just so foreign. You just don't think that your competent parents are ever going to need that kind of help. Now, if one professional has simply shown me the 10 early warning signs of Alzheimer's disease, which are in your packets, which I always make sure that people get these. They're in my book. They're on my website on elderrage.com. I think we need them on the sides of buses. I want public services announcements when on the TV. I want them so well known that people just immediately understand what these warning signs are about. So what I'd like you to do is to get the warning signs out, because most of you that are professionals know, but some of you caregivers that are in a minute, we're going to go over some of them, make sure that you know. And this is the biggest thing as a professional that you can do for a family. If you come and the daughter's sitting there describing some of these odd behaviors, but subtle, intermittent, it comes and goes, and that person is looking okay to you that day, give them the warning signs. Get a spiral notebook and say, you know what, why don't you write down anything that seems odd? Everything that seems, I took Dad to a neurologist, did the mini state mental, what day is it, what time is it, who is the governor, he knew that. Would have had some trouble in California with that recently with the governor thing, wouldn't I? But he was, she wasn't a geriatric dementia specialist neurologist, and she sent me home again with him. And so I started to think, it's me. It's got to be me. I just going to have to buck up and handle this. So he's screaming, he's yelling, he's throwing me out of the house, he's calling me every nasty name. I cried every day for a year. I still got the dark circles from it. Cried every day for a year trying to solve this. But then he would be intermittently adorable and my sweet dad again. So I would go, oh, he's back. I don't want to acknowledge the pink elephant in the living room that happened yesterday because I'm in denial that my dad is doing these things to me. So it was so heart-wrenching. And had I known the 10 warning signs, that was the big, big, big key. Get them out of your packet if you can right now. I'd like to go over some of them because I want you to Xerox these. Raise your right hand and promise me you're going to Xerox these and make 1,000 copies of them and give them to everybody you come in contact with. This is the biggest thing we can do. So when, here's what happens, and I know most of you know this, but let's make sure there's no holes in anybody's knowledge. Dementia is an umbrella term, a big umbrella, dementia. We got Lewy body, frontal lobe, vascular, PICS, we got 100-some different types of dementias. Alzheimer's makes up for 50, maybe 60%, different statistics on that. So if there is dementia, the likelihood is toward Alzheimer's, but it's not for sure. You got to check all these other types of dementias out. So the right doctor is the key. And aren't you blessed here at USF that you've got a diagnostic center for this so that you can refer people here? I think I've done this 100 times around the country now. I'll be in counties where they go, we've got one, doctor that deals with older people about 4 counties over. We have less than 9,000 geriatricians in the whole country. Ay, ay, ay. So we need more people going into this. But let's say somebody says to you, I always say, how's your mom doing? Oh, she's great. She ever ask you the same question over and over? Oh, yeah. She ever tell you a story and then, an hour later tell you again? Yeah. But, she's 80-some. Yeah, it's normal. That's the biggest problem. If you handed them the 10 warning signs that said, you know what, that could be a sign of Alzheimer's disease. Now, don't get freaked out about the name Alzheimer's. We've got something we can do about it. In the last 6 years, we've got some medications that can help you. Because people don't go to the doctor, or they do go to their GP, and the doctor says, well, I was told they're old. What do you expect? The attitude is they're going to die anyway. Okay? So if I had seen those warning signs, and I would have seen, oh, short-term memory loss, that could be a sign of, because he would tell me stories about stuff that happened in 1942. And the long-term was still there, and I didn't equate those two. I didn't know the difference between short-term and long-term memory. This was not my field. It just didn't equate it. I'm astonished I didn't, but I didn't. And so I would tell him something. He'd ask me a question, and 3 o'clock, Dad, we're going at 3. What time? Dad, we're going at 3. Dad, you've asked me that 4 times. I told you we're going at 3 o'clock. What if one professional had said, when they ask you the same question over and over, instead of talking louder like it's his hearing, or repeating it again with a little tone, how about if you say, gee, Dad, what time do you think we're going? 3 o'clock? Yeah. He might have just been trying to make conversation. He might need a hug. He might just need, that's a way to teach a family how to test that when they're asking that same question over and over. Another little technique is to get like 4x6 cards and write answers to the most common questions down and say, you know what, that's on your card right there. One woman made a booklet and she laminated it, had it chained to his bark lounger, and every time she'd say, honey, the answer to that question is on page 8 of your book. He could get that, and that would take time. New to him every time. So, there were creative things that these social workers and these people could have taught me to use that I didn't have any idea how to come up with things like that. So the short-term memory is the one you want to tell them, that could be it. And 1 out of every 10 persons by the age of 65 will get some form of dementia. The likelihood is toward Alzheimer's. It goes up every year. Now, if I'd known that, my parents were in their 80s, goes up every year so that by age 85, it's nearly 50%, 1 out of 2. What if they told me that? Honey, 1 out of 2, by the time they're your dad's age, could have this. Oh my gosh, maybe that's what's happening. Let's look at some of these other warning signs. Putting things in odd places. Now, we all misplace our keys. Don't freak out if you find the keys in the microwave. Explain that to somebody, because I'm thinking, well, Dad, where's the pencil sharpener and the stapler? Well, I don't know. Well, they were at the desk this morning. There's been nobody here but us. I didn't put them anywhere. Where'd you put them? I didn't touch them. I think he's trying to drive me crazy. I don't know that that's a warning sign, putting things in odd places. Nobody told me that. I found him later in the closet, and I'm like, what is he trying to do to me? Is he driving me out of my mind? What about the change in behavior when they go from one extreme to the other? He could just be sweet as pie, and all of a sudden, boom, he's exploding about something. And here was the first clue. The first day I got there, the house was such a disaster. Why, I didn't know to call Adult Protective Services from the minute I walked into that house. Been on record with them instead of getting 7 of my friends and family to come clean this house. Took 3 days. why would I go through that if I had known that, gosh, I'm going to need to be on record with APS with this. I'm going to need an officer to come over here and talk to him to scare him into action, that he's got to have a caregiver. Why didn't I know to get the physician to write a prescription, must have a caregiver for Mabel? Why? Why would I do that? So, oh man, what I didn't know. So, back to the warning signs. What if I had, they said, oh, I was going to tell you what happened that first day. That's right. See my dementias? I don't have it. Came back. I'm going to fall in here. I came back from the store, and I had thrown 2 little hand towels away. And he came out of the bedroom, took them out of the trash, threw them in my face, screaming at me, absolutely screaming at me. And I was like, Daddy, I'm so sorry. Were these special or something? They were so dilapidated. They wouldn't have made it through the washing machine. They're shredding and they're crusted. I bought you 2 little new hand towels. They were $1.50. I'm so sorry. The veins, the purple veins, the screaming, the yelling. I'm crying, I'm pleading, I'm begging. See, now with the knowledge I have now, had somebody told me that illogical and irrational thinking is a part of this, I would have gone, oh, this seems odd. This seems illogical. This seems irrational. This is over the top, even for him, who's had a bad behavior his whole life. I could never imagine my father as a younger man doing this, but it was exaggerated. Then I would have gone, oh, okay, I see. Warning sign, warning, we need him evaluated by a geriatric dementia specialist, a geriatric neurologist, a geriatric psychiatrist, someone who has a heart for seniors, who's going to do the appropriate tests to uncover this. Most of you know it's not an easy diagnosis. It's going to be a blood test, a neurological test, a memory test, maybe even a PET scan, positron emission tomography, which is one of the newest diagnostic tests that can help uncover it sooner than later. But see, the family doesn't reach out. That first stage is 2 to 4 years, typically. Nobody reaches out because, oh, so they ask you the same question. Oh, so they tell you a story a couple times. So they, is it that bad? The doctor says there's nothing really that wrong. So most of them wait about 4 years. And what did you tell me last night at dinner? That you get the call about 4 years into it, and it's the crisis call. After a crisis, that's when they finally call. And what do they always say? I can't take it anymore. They've been putting up with it and putting up with it and putting up with it. And that's where we're trying to reach those first 4 years, those people in that early stage. Because now they've progressed to stage 2. Okay, 2 to 4, stage 1. 2 to 10, stage 2. Broad window, needs full-time care. Can't ever be left alone. Could leave the stove on with the gas, which happened to me. Almost burned the house down. Had a man call me crying. He said, Jacqueline, I loved your book. My father and mother, dementia is starting in them, and my dad left the thing on, burned the house down. I said, oh my gosh, you're okay? He goes, I've got to have your help. I said, well, are they all right? He goes, yeah, but my father, 92, he's rebuilding on the property, rebuilding the house. They're 92. Oh my gosh. So, durable power of attorney, didn't have that in place. So make sure you tell families about durable power of attorney, that they get that in place prior to the diagnosis. Once there's a diagnosis of dementia, that person's not of sound mind, cannot sign durable power of attorney for health and financial issues. Then you're looking farther, probably having to go into guardianship and conservatorship, and that's another nightmare, which most of you know about. Luckily, I didn't have to go that far. But so it was just unbelievable. One thing after another. I'm going to go back, coming back, stages. Stage 1, 2 to 4. Stage 2, 2 to 10. Stage 3, 1 to 3, and that is the nursing home time. Now, the biggest point to get to the families is that this early diagnosis, there's something we can do about it with medication. And you all know the names of these medications, but just in case, the first one that came out is called Aricept, A-R-I-C-E-P-T, and that's by Pfizer or Eisai Pharmaceutical. And that drug was the drug that was available at that time with Mom and Dad, and that worked phenomenally. I saw an improvement. They said, you may or may not see an improvement. Once I got to the right doctor, I finally got the med a year into it. And I saw a huge improvement cognitively. They were both much clearer. The second drug that came out after that was Exelon, E-X-E-L-O-N, by Novartis Pharmaceutical. And that, we switched them to that about a year and a half into it. And I got another little boost of them little different neurotransmitters, and I got an improvement. Now, not everybody will see an improvement. I'll have people say, "But we tried one of those medications, we didn't see any improvement, we took them off of it." Statistics are showing that if they're taken off the med, they progress downward much faster than just keeping them on. So make sure you tell the families, you may not see an improvement, but this may help from progressing downward as quickly. Emphasize that. I can't tell you how many times I hear, didn't work. Third one, Reminill, R-E-M-I-N-Y-L, by Janssen Pharmaceutical. The new one we just had FDA approval on is Memantine by Forest Labs. And that was used in Germany and Europe for about 10 years, and we just got it here. That's for later stage, for more moderate toward later, and it's used in combination many times with the other meds. Yes, side effects. Please tell people that if they experience any gastrointestinal, not to think that their loved one has the flu. It could be the medication. Call the doctor immediately. We did that with Mom. She threw up a few times. Dad tolerated it fine. We had to cut back on the dose. Gradually went up. Also, changing from one med to another. Stopping one and starting another is not the way to go. You want to taper it down in dosage while you taper the other one on. Very, very gradual progression. So once we got the brain chemistry for the dementia slowed down, we actually can slow the progression of it. Different statistics on that. You know, the drugs haven't been out that long, but a doctor that wrote a chapter for the back of my book, Dr. Rodman Schenkel, I don't know if you've heard of him, he's internationally known as a dementia specialist. His view is that he's able to slow by 2 to 4 years the progression. It's huge for families. That's buying some time. In that time, if I can, instead of 2 to 4 years, I can get an extra 2 to 4 years out of that stage 1, that they're still independent and they're still home and I don't have to be there 24/7. That's huge for me. I'm buying some time. Maybe medical science in the next 2 to 4 year period will come up with some better drugs, better Band-Aids, maybe even a cure. If it's you or it's your loved one, that is huge. But when you get that call at the Area Agency on Aging or at the Alzheimer's Association or any of your professional places and they're already into stage 2, do you know how upsetting it is for a caregiver to hear, well, if we'd only heard from you 4 years ago? So that's why I'm trying to get you all to just, give out those 10 warning signs, make sure that the families know them, and tell them to make copies and give to every one of their friends and family. I've got this mission going, and in my radio show, that's one of my biggest missions that I do. So once we got the brain chemistry slowed down, for the dementia, an antidepressant was a huge help for both of my parents, absolutely huge. Couldn't get them out of bed before that, 23 hours a day waiting to die. I said, what are you guys going to do today? Oh, we're just waiting to die. Okay. And they weren't that far into it yet. They just, the loss of initiative, which is a warning sign of Alzheimer's disease, but also a sign of depression. So you need the right doctor to determine, is it depression, is it dementia, or is it both? Because it very often is both. A very large percentage of people who have dementia are also greatly helped with an antidepressant. Now, we needed one that was a little more sedating for my father. And we needed one that was a little more activating for Mom. So, we had to work with the doctor. And this is a whole year into this, trying to get this figured out. And the one that worked on her didn't work on him, and vice versa, and the dosages, and we finally got it right. And what a difference. I was finally able to get them up and get them, that they wanted to do something. And I could get them to go to adult daycare, which was the godsend, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. And then with Dad, we worked on the anti-aggression. And I don't mean zombieing them out with Thorazine like they did 4 times in the psychiatric hospital for violence, when they had to strap him down and he hit everybody and all of that and all the meds that they put him through. Once I got to the right doctor and we worked on the right medication, with him, it turned out to be Risperdal. We tried numerous medications. On him, that was the one that seemed to work the best. When we went up in the dosage, I had a nightmare with him. So the dosage is very, very critical and key for monitoring when a person's on an anti-aggression type that. But his impulse control was never very good. And that was really accentuated with the dementia starting in him. So that was just great. And then he started to be more like my dad, even with dementia. It was in the beginning. He was still in the beginning. They're both my parents had Alzheimer's disease, both misdiagnosed. Whole year I could have gotten them help. Didn't get professionals directing me. So we got the brain chemistry balanced, and that was no small feat. But help the families to get that done properly and make sure that they rule out the reversible dementias. A B12 deficiency, a folate deficiency, thyroid deficiency, depression alone. These things or medications that they're taking can cause some dementia-like symptoms. So I've had people say, email me, thousands of emails I've gotten, and they say, make sure you tell everybody about B12. My husband was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and once they gave him a daily B12 shot, he was fine. No dementia, really. Doctor had misdiagnosed. So the right doctor's got to do the appropriate tests, rule out the reversible dementias, rule out what it is, and properly diagnose it and treat it. And boy, are you lucky here. Then I was able to do behavioral. Now, what if one professional had said to me, because I would say, he would just harp on something, harp, and you couldn't, and you'd sit there, and the tendency for the family is to use logic and reason. Dad, now here's why we don't turn the heater on to 90 degrees. It's August. It's 100 degrees outside. We don't need the heater up to 90. Okay. As soon as you go, he'd get up there and he'd turn that thing up. Now, what if one professional had taught me logic and reason is not going to work in most cases? What if I had been taught to use distraction? Dad, we got a letter from Aunt Rose. Wait till you hear what has happened. Oh my gosh. You know what? The towels are dry. Help me in the dryer. Help me fold these. Distraction, redirection. Instead of, now I didn't know how to, I figured that out on my own little pea brain. Nobody taught me that. And then I find out there's been books that psychologists have written about this. I'm going, well, nobody knows this. I've got to teach people how to do this. So redirection, it's time to take the dog for a walk. Let's go take a walk. Let's, anything to redirect that broken record thing. And the other technique was reminiscence, because I could get him talking about stuff out of the past, and because he couldn't remember, because short-term was having a problem, but he could still tell me long-term stuff. Now, what if one professional said, get him talking about the old days? Dad, what was it like the day, you met Mom walking down the street in Butte, Montana, love at first sight, 60-year marriage? What was it like the day I was born, the blessed event? What was it like, when you were at, working at Bethlehem Steel in San Francisco and, Pearl Harbor, and you called Mom, and I'd heard that story a gazillion times. But you know what? Teach the families to get a little tape recorder and record these stories for their children and for their family to pass down, because you know what? I've heard that Pearl Harbor story a gazillion times, but you know what I would give now to hear it again? I've lost my parents, and I didn't record that story. So teach the families how to make a scrapbook, how to record stories, and not make it a formal thing. Okay, sit down and talk. Just have that tape recorder when they start going off on some of these stories, that they can record them, save them. This is the age we're in. We can save these stories for future generations down the road. Didn't know, didn't think of it. So reminiscence was good. And I went through 40 caregivers. Some were there for an hour. He'd scream and yell and call him nasty names, and they'd leave. Nobody would put up with him. So I was really stuck, and so I had a different audience every day, and I'd say, ask him the one about Pearl Harbor. I'd get somebody else to listen to the stories. But the other technique I learned was validation. How many of you are familiar with Naomi Feil's work, The Validation Theory? Some of you are familiar? I want to make sure you teach this to the families you come in contact with. It's so valuable. The validation theory says that people with dementia, when they say things that are untrue, that instead of thwarting them and trying to correct the accuracy of what they're saying, it's better to go behind it and look at the feeling behind what they're saying. Now, I'll give you an example, and you can use this. One day, I was having the best day with Mom. She was so clear. Really, a really clear day. And as a caregiver, let me tell you how precious those are. And teach the families. Don't focus on that, she's going to go downhill again. Savor living in the moment of that day or that moment or that hour where she is clear. The tendency is to go, oh, this isn't going to last. This isn't going to last. And then you've lost the joy of experiencing that hour. So I'm having a totally clear day with her, very lucid. I'm like, wow. All of a sudden, out of the blue, and this is a warning sign, they can change like this, She bursts into tears, and she says, my father killed my mother. And I said, what, Mom? No, for heaven's sakes, why would you think? No. Gosh, Grandpa died when I was a baby. I never even met him. You know, Grammy lived to be 97. She took care of herself in her own home till she was 94, 95. He didn't kill her. Why would you think that? Well, he killed her. No, my gosh, Mom, no, he's up in heaven with Grammy. Well, he most certainly is not. He is in hell. Validation theory. Tell me about your dad. Now, I had heard these stories a million times. She didn't care for her father too much. One of 7 sisters out on the homestead off of Billings, Montana. And her father beat her mom. She was the only one of the 7 sisters who jumped on his back. I heard the story with the broom, you know. And every time she served me soft-boiled eggs, you know, when I was a kid, she'd say, you know what my father would say when my mother served him soft-boiled eggs, if they weren't done just right, he'd throw them on the floor. I can't eat a soft-boiled egg without thinking of that story. And so I'd heard these stories about her father. And at age 13, each gal would leave the little house on the prairie, it's basically one-room schoolhouse, and go into Billings to work for their room and board so they could attend high school. Isn't it interesting, at 82, even though she left home at 13, that the hatred of her father was coming out in such a dramatic way? Validation theory says, possibly by letting that person talk about those feelings that are unresolved, those issues of a lifetime, and letting them purge them instead of thwarting them. Your father didn't kill your mother. You know, saying, tell me about your dad. She was able to get it out, and she was much calmer after that. What if a professional had taught me that? A whole year, I'm sitting there using logic and reason and thwarting all those feelings that were coming out of both of them that they were trying to purge out. So teach the validation theory. Now, let's take dementia out of the equation altogether. Dementia's over there. Let's say you just got a darn son of a you-know-what. You know, because it wasn't all dementia with my dad. I can't blame it all on Alzheimer's. He was a difficult person. I loved him dearly, but he was challenging. And we created our own nightmare. For 50 years, we let him pound his fist and scream and yell. And we walked on eggshells not to upset Daddy, you know. And so we enabled him. We reinforced that behavior again and again and again that he could get away with it. We created him. Boy, what I would do now, you know, I think about being 10 years old and going back and thinking I would get him into anger management, he would be an antidepressant, he would be on, you know, but who knew in the 50s? Who knew about this stuff? There was no women's shelters, you know, where was that mother going to go? 2 little kids, no education, no job, you know, no family in San Francisco, everybody's back in Montana. Where's she going to go? There's no women's shelters like there are now. You know, it was a dirty little family secret that we had this. My godfather read my book and said, you know, I knew your dad 57 years. I never once saw the rage. We never told anyone. It was the dirty family secret. Remember 10, 15 years ago how domestic violence was kind of whispered about? It was a dirty little family secret. Now there's public service announcements, there's shelters for women, there's, you know, it's out there that you don't take abuse, you get help, there's places to go. This issue with what I'm talking about now, about challenging difficult elders that a lot of caregivers are not wanting to talk about. It's still a dirty little family secret that I'm trying to bring out of the closet. People say, my God, your book is so, you know, so real and so honest and so, you know, I say, you know, if it helps other people, helped Kelly, and not have to go through this to the degree that I did, you know, that's a mission of mine. So here finally we got the brain chemistry balance. I learned to do some of these behavioral things. And what worked on Dad was rewards and consequences. Just like with a kid or an animal, we rewarded his, I just created this. What if we reward his good behavior and we don't reward the bad? Maybe we can try to turn around this lifelong negative behavior pattern at 85 with the onset of dementia. Okay, it worked. It worked. I cannot tell you. Not 100%, but it worked. And this is what we did. When he was being nice, oh my God, you were a pleasure to be, hug, kiss, just, be totally, just reward, extra dessert works really good too. If you, Dad, it's time to take a shower. I just took one. It was a week ago. I'm not getting it. What are you going to do, hog tie and drag a 185-pound man? What if the professional said, just offer him more dessert after dinner? It might get him in there. So, he'd go in there, and he'd sit there. I had a little bench in there. We finally figured out if we heated it up, made it more like a steam room, and I heated the towels in the dryer and got him a little wraparound Velcro thing so he could easily, it was hard for him with his arthritis to get undressed and everything. It was uncomfortable. It was cold. And so making it as user-friendly as I could, then we could get him in there, and he'd sit there, and the water rushing over him. You going to scrub? No. My caregiver, I finally found one that could put up with him. Amazing Ariana. Wait till you read about her. No experience with elder care, 1 year of high school. This girl was smarter than any of the psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors that I went to. She was unbelievable. She goes in, she called me, she goes, I scrubbed your father from head to toe. I put on the yellow rubber gloves, and I went in there, and she goes, and I do mean every inch. He's screaming and yelling and hitting me, but I don't care. He's going to be scrubbed up. He hasn't taken a shower for a week. We got it to the point that when she finally get him in there, and well, if you want dessert tonight, you're going to have to take a shower. He'd sit in there. Are you going to scrub? No. All she'd have to do is get out the yellow rubber gloves and snap them on. It was like Pavlov's dog. He starts scrubbing, did not want her touching him, where. So we finally could get him in the shower and then when he'd get out, we'd hug and kiss him, and just overboard. It was like saccharin, you need an insulin, injection after that. And we give him, fat-free, of course, but extra, little helping. And so we rewarded the good behavior. Now, try to teach the families that when they've got a challenging person. Now, if somebody's farther into the dementia, if they're very far in, that's not going to work. But somebody in the beginning that's just challenging. But it did work on Dad all the way through. So I got to tell you, work on him. It might work on some people, So once we did the behavioral stuff, then I was able to get him into adult daycare. And I told you that's one of my biggest missions, nods of the National Adult Day Service Association. I can't do enough for that organization. Now, what if a professional had told me the value of it? I didn't know. I was like, what is that? What is that? Nursing home? I've never even heard of adult daycare. I can't get him in the shower. How am I going to get him to go there? I'm not going there. Everybody's too old. Dad, you're 85. There's nobody older than you. Now, what if one of the social workers had said, here's how you do it, honey. Get a prescription from the doctor that he's got to go to adult daycare. Anything, you know what I would do now? Anything I would want my parents to do, I would get a prescription. Mom, I need you to eat a little more. You're 92 pounds soaking wet. Jacqueline, I'm not taking another bite. I'm going to get fat. But I have a prescription from the doctor. I have to call the doctor and tell her what you ate. I could get 4 more bites in her because of that darn thing. Once I learned to do that, she would open her mouth, well, not for me. So, what if the social worker said, here's how we do adult daycare. I'll call a few times and make a relationship with your dad over the phone. Oh, Mr. Marcel, we've got this lovely center down here. We would just love to have you come down. There's a lot of, the elderly people. We could use your help with the bingo. Do you think you could help us out? Oh, I don't know. Maybe sometime. I'm not sure. Oh, hi, Mr. Marcel. I was just in the area. Hi, Jacqueline. How you doing? Oh, just, seeing some of the elderly folks here in the area. Thought I'd drop by. I brought you some cookies. Oh, Jake, we hear you play the accordion just beautifully. Do you think we'd pay you if you could come down and entertain some of the seniors at the center? Yeah? Yeah. If your wife can bring her recipe for her cinnamon rolls, they're legendary. We would just love to make those for some of the seniors if you could come down. Do you know how much easier my life would have been if I had, instead of trying to hog tie and drag him and stun gun him and strap him to the hood of the car to get him to the daycare? It was unbelievable. The first day he's there, screaming, yelling, calling people names, throwing his food on the floor. He's touching my mother inappropriately. Had never done that before. He goes into the bathroom, tries to escape. Can't get out, comes out, exposing himself. I'm very sorry about that visual. Messes in his pants. 4 hours later, we come to pick up, like, Jacqueline, we cannot work with your father. I don't think you're going to find anybody that will. Yeah, honey, his dementia is so bad. He just doesn't know what he's doing. Your mother's lovely. We'd love to have her anytime. I won some earrings at the bingo. Lovely day, lovely. So we, oh, yes, he does know what he's doing. Dementia doesn't mean stupid. So now I can't imagine my father doing those behaviors when he was a younger man. It's more of who he was, controlling, dominating. He does not want to be there. He's going to use everything he's got not to be there. It's called the Morso theory of aging. Dr. Morso, you ever heard of him? Whoever you were as a young person, you're going to be more so that way when you get older. Or you can be 180 degrees different, like, you know. So you met one person with Alzheimer's, you met one person with they all can all be different. But anyway, so we took him home, and we said, you know, Mom, do you want to go back? Yeah, I had a lovely time. I'm not going there anymore. Okay, no problem. You can stay home. You know, Mom's going to go, but you don't have to go. You can stay here. You'll probably fall, break a hip. We'll take you to the doctor as soon as we get back. Next morning, I swear, got up, got in the shower without coaxing, went to the daycare, ate his lunch, left Mom alone, made his birdhouse, and we get there to pick him up. He's singing Swanee River and dancing a waltz. Social worker's like, we cannot even believe he's the same person as he was yesterday. I said, I'm here to tell you dementia doesn't mean stupid. Okay, so it took us about 3-4 weeks to get him into the routine with him fighting us continuously. Finally got into the routine, but wouldn't it have been much easier to do it the other way? I could have given her the same $20 to pay him every day, you know, just go back, and then he would have got acclimated to going there. You got to remember, any kind of change is very scary for anybody, but really scary for a senior, particularly with someone with dementia, particularly someone who's very controlling like that. So they got in the routine. They loved to go. The shuttle would come and pick them up, bring them home. One day, the shuttle brings him home, and he gets off the shuttle, and he is swearing a blue streak. And he's like, you know, they're an hour and a half late. I'm frantic. We're calling. We don't know where they are. And he's swearing and screaming. I told him where to go. And I'm sorry, ma'am. I got lost. I'm a new driver. I told you. Mom's like, we had a lovely ride. and the driver's like, you know, ma'am, I'm so sorry. And I told you. And he goes, I've been instructed never to take directions from the Alzheimer's patients. They ended up in San Jose. We don't know where they went. So, and then one day I swear to you, he gets off the shuttle and he goes, I have a dream. And oh my gosh, it's Martin Luther King Day. The current events program that they had that day, he was so interested in. He goes, did you know about that man? Did you know that what a great man. I didn't know. I'm like, my mouth is hitting the floor. Second stage dementia, stage 2 now. And he had the most marvelous day at daycare because he was so interested in the current events that he remembered it to come home and tell us about it. That's how much interest that he had. He had a very lucid day. And he didn't remember it several days from then, but you know what? He had a great day that day, and that was blessing for us. And then one day he came home and Mom and Dad, you know, one day one will have the dementia, and then the other one won't have it, and they'll look at the other one going, you know, she's really losing it, and then he's really losing it. One day, they came home from daycare, and Mom goes, Dad's got a part-time job. I thought, well, they gave him something to do at the center. And I go, oh, really, Dad? What are you doing? He goes, I'm taking care of Clark Gable's horses. I said, really? Well, that's great. And Mom's like, yes, and we've just got to go buy hay today. They were both in the same little demented episode thing, at the same time, just loving it. And now, so tell the families, do you thwart them and say, Clark Gable's horses died a few years ago? You know, no. Is it harmless to say, oh, how great? Here's a technique. They go into the bathroom, they look in the mirror, and they tell you, the families will say they think there's somebody living in the bathroom. They look in the mirror and they see an 85-year-old man. They see themselves as 30 or 40 years old, maybe. So say, gee, Mom, it's going to be your birthday soon. How old are you going to be? 32? That clues the family into what is going on in her head when she was 32. To go with that, take the mirrors away. She thinks there's a stranger living in her bathroom. Gosh, glow tape around the perimeter of the door. Dad was going into the bathroom, into the closet at night. What if I had known to put the glow tape around the perimeter of the bathroom and around the toilet so he knew where to go? What if I'd known to put the grab bars everywhere? Get rid of the glass shower things. What if I'd known to turn the thermostat down on the water heater so they wouldn't scald themselves? What if I known to get rid of the throw rug so he wouldn't trip on them like he was doing? So many little techniques and hints and tips that I could have been instructed would have helped. Almost out of time, so a little bit more. I got a little bit more to tell you. Once we got him in the daycare, that gave the caregiver the reprieve. You, as the social workers, as the professionals, do whatever you can to encourage that family to get that loved one into the adult daycare while they're still caring for them at home. It's the answer. Then I was as stubborn as my father. Guess who I'm more like, my mother or my father? Well, I didn't want to go to a support group. I didn't want to go hear about other people's problems. I got two right here. I do not want to listen to your problems. Why didn't one of these social workers, Jacqueline, I was in the neighborhood, while your mom and dad's at daycare, let's go to lunch. Oh, how nice. Thank you so much. Butter me up real good at lunch and then go, oh, you know what, I got to stop in here for a minute. Come on in. Oh my gosh, sit down for a minute. Let's talk. Support group going on. I would have got acclimated to it a year sooner. I didn't want to go. Once I got going with it, solutions started to present themselves. So go that extra inch, go that extra mile with those families that need that extra help, because when they get to that support group, I think the biggest thing that I get emails, thousands, is like, I cannot believe I'm not the only one going through this. There's 50 million caregivers, but everybody thinks they're the only one. Nobody could be going through this like they're going through it. And there are online support groups. If you go to elderrage.com on my website, scroll down on the left, you'll see valuable resource links. Click over to that. Go on there and you'll find there's some online support groups where 3 o'clock in the morning, you got a sundowning parent, they're up all night. Oh, what can they do? Well, there's somebody else that's up at 3 a.m., or they can talk to Australia. There's somebody there. So give them something tangible ideas of things that they can do to make it more manageable. And what if they've got a sibling that won't help? Everybody asked me, did you have, brothers or sisters? I said, yeah, I have a brother. He lived a half hour away from mom and dad. Wouldn't lift a finger, but I'm not bitter about it. Can you make anybody do anything that they don't want to do? They can't. You can't make them. My father was horrible to my brother growing up. I didn't get that. I got the love. He was horrible to my brother. My brother wouldn't have anything to do with it. So I could either be bitter and angry, or I could you know what, I got to let this go if I'm going to have a relationship with my only brother, and I did. And that's so valuable to teach families, their loved ones are going to die. Their parents will pass. What's left is what they have their family. If they destroy those sibling relationships, those other family relationships, that's what they've got left. They've got to nurture them. So you know what I would do now? I would give my brother, I would say, well, I know you can't come and, do the caregiving part, but, here's a list of things tasks that need to be done. The car needs servicing. He could have taken the car to get it serviced for me. He could have gone and taken it for gas. He could have got all the things that need to be done with the car. He could have done some weeding in the yard. He could have cleaned out the garage. He could, things that he could do when they were at daycare to help. I didn't even know to ask that. You know what I would do now? And tell families to do this. I felt so alone, and my closest friends weren't going through it. And days would go by and the phone wouldn't even ring. I mean, I was, calling the pizza delivery just to have somebody coming to the house. Come on in, have a slice. I'm trapped there 24/7. The Meals on Wheels was huge. I wish I'd gotten that sooner. Just that supplied somebody coming even to the house. But I would make a list now of all my friends, and I would call each one. I'd say, you know what? I need you to call me on Monday. I need you to call me on every Tuesday. So I would know every day of the week I would have somebody calling me that I could cry to and who would say, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. because a lot of people disappeared, people that it just chokes me to even think that I was going through this hard, hard time, and people that I had done so much for disappeared. Isn't that interesting? They couldn't handle it. But the people, the support group could. So then teach your families how to get an emotional shift. The support group will help this, but it's an emotional shift. So when my father was calling me every nasty name, instead of crying, I finally got to the emotional shift where I'd go, yeah, I know, I'm a bitch, I'm a whore. Okay, so let's do, I wouldn't just cry about it. The words just bounced off of me. It didn't mean like it used to mean to me. They were just empty words. He was upset about something. And the language that'll come out, even my mother who never swore in her life, some words that would come out of her, I'd go, mother! And I finally got to the point of just letting it go. So the emotional shift comes when you realize everybody's going to die. We're born, we live, we die. That's what happens. And to teach the caregiver, they're required to make their loved ones safe, that they have the right doctors, the right medications, that they're not in pain. But they're not required to let the caregiving destroy their life, nor would their loved one want that for them. When I finally got that my parents would want me to have the most happy life, and they would never really want me to be burdened with their care, I got it. It was like, I'm not honoring them by destroying my own life. If they were sitting here healthy, they would say, I want you to have a happy, happy life. Teach that to the families, because they feel the guilt when they have to put their loved ones someplace where they've said, I would never place you in a nursing home, and they have to end up doing it. Teach them that. I'm out of time. Now, did you all see me on the cover of, what was it, Cosmopolitan? I was on the cover of Cosmo. I was a cover girl. You didn't see me? Wait, I think I brought it with me. Hold on. Did I bring, oh, this is it here, yeah. Oh, you know what? I meant AARP. It's similar. How upsetting is it when you get that notice in the mail from AARP? Has that happened to you? How do they know I just turned 50? You get this notice in the mail from AARP. I'm thinking, they can't find Osama bin Laden. When he turns 50, AARP will find him. Thank you for having me.